I mean, obviously he's better than Foles. Foles is worse than Mitch, so.
I'd
Danny
put Wentz,
Jones, Danny Dimes, I don't know.
I'd put him above Haskins.
Smart.
Oh, hello there. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NFL Strategy Show. It's the first look edition for week 13. Last week of the fantasy playoff or fantasy regular season before we get into the playoffs, but we're not here to talk about that. We're talking DFS, and I'm Dave Loughran. With me, as always, Ben Rasa, the jack of all trades. Hit him up on Twitter at JazzRazDFS. Sal Vetri as well at Sal Vetri DFS on the Twitter machine. Sal Vetri DFS on the YouTubes, and myself at Laffy_D, LOUGHY_D. Ben, we're coming off of a wild week in football. Postponements, moved to Tuesday, moved to Wednesday, pushed back another week. Crazy nonsense going on around the league. Late COVID-19 positives that blow up entire offenses. And here we are once again in week 13 with a postponed Washington-Pittsburgh game and another 11-game slate with a lot of moving pieces early in the week.
So, early in the year, we had a couple situations, but the NFL was able to use the bye weeks as cushions. Now everyone's had their bye week, and it doesn't work like that. So the domino effect of the Steelers playing, me and Sal were talking before the show about this. The Steelers play on Wednesday. Obviously, they can't play on Sunday. So then you got to move that game. There's just such a domino effect. Makes it tough. It's unfortunate, but they are still playing football, and that's a win.
That's right. Sal, what's going on, brother? How was your Thanksgiving?
Yeah, not bad. The Thanksgiving was good. I had some of the sausage stuffing that Laffy recommended, and it was a damn good time. Traveling back in the airport yesterday or 2 days ago, on Sunday. It was actually kind of not surreal, but a pretty cool experience. They had the Chiefs game on in Tampa Bay, and there's probably 6 dudes at all different tables in the airport with FanDuel or DraftKings open, and we just kept watching Tyreek Hill score touchdowns. There's 3 people that were cheering. It was a great time.
It was remarkable. Almost 43 fantasy points in the first quarter alone. I mean, insane. He had more receiving yards than a lot of quarterbacks had passing yards. I don't know what Carson Wentz finished with, but I can almost assure you that he did not individually eclipse Tyreek Hill. I just have utter contempt for the man at this point. Thank God we get to just load up on Green Bay Packers this week. Maybe we won't. I don't know. Philly's defense actually hasn't looked bad. They just wear down late in games because they're on the field for 59 of 60 minutes. But that's okay. We're here to talk about a little bit more than that, going position by position for the first look show. And we're happy to have you guys with us as always. Hope all of you guys had a great holiday as well. If I forgot to mention it yesterday, Christmas only 25 days away. We're going to have a Christmas Day game, and we're going to have 5 Christmas NBA games. So equally exciting stuff coming up down the pike, and we'll certainly have content for all of that. But hey, hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. And if you like what we do here, you want to help support us, you think we've helped you along the way, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 50K by the end of the year. It's going to be tough, but we're making a push. And we can only get there with your help. So let's get started. All right, Ben, quarterback position. We've got, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson at the top. We'll get to the Will Fuller news briefly. For those of you that missed that, he's suspended, going to miss the rest of the season for PED abuse. I don't know if I really want to go to anyone up here in the top echelon above that 7K range. What says you?
So we got most of the big time names. We don't have Mahomes, but other than that, a lot of those guys, some mobile, Kyler, even though he hasn't been running. I don't love the matchups though. And, I'll bring it down. You mentioned Philly, you got the Patriots, which is not bad for Herbert, but Colts for Deshaun Watson, not that easy. Certainly the Rams can get after Kyler. The Giants defense, I've been impressed with them all year. I really think they're better than people realize. Now, obviously Russ still has the advantage. He's got his weapons and he's at home in a big spread, but I'm with you. Last week we talked on this show and it was very obvious. I thought that Mahomes, like many, was in a fantastic spot. I tried to really pay up at quarterback. This week it's a little flatter. I see guys up and down the price range. So if I had to pick one of the 3, I would actually just go to the top with Russell Wilson, but it's not going to be a week where I just jam up top.
Yeah, I mean, look, Patrick Mahomes was one spot where I'm with you. And same with Tyreek Hill, where I didn't, you even said it on Sunday, and I thought we didn't even spend that much time on the game because it was concise and well stated. Hey, you don't need to overthink this. this is a spot that if you're not getting to these guys, you're likely doing something wrong. And if it doesn't go right, you still did something right, because Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill in that spot, no one expected 60 fantasy points, but an absolute blow-up performance was in the cards for someone that is the most explosive receiver in football. Sal, at the top, are you interested in Watson or Murray or Russell Wilson?
Yeah, I am. I think I like the top end of this week, but Watson's going to be very interesting this week to see how many people ownership-wise are going to steer away because Will Fuller not being out there. Like the price point coming in at 7,500, not the most expensive guy. Like him a lot. The way he's been playing the last 6 weeks is maybe the best in football, right behind Patrick Mahomes up there. It's tough because this team went from being one of the deepest wide receiver groups too. They cut Kenny Stills. He's right now I know this, they could potentially resign him. He cleared waivers. Randall Cobb's on IR, no Will Fuller. It's Brandon Cooks, it's Kiki Kute in the slot. And then I think they're probably going to put Coulter, who's an undersized rookie that doesn't have much speed, so nowhere near Will Fuller on the outside. My guess is they go, at least for this week, if they don't re-sign Stills, to more two heavy tight end sets. David Johnson might come back, but you have two decent tight ends, good tight ends in Atkins and Fells. I think that he could succeed with that. So if Watson's ownership doesn't come in, I think at $7,500, he would be the guy that I want to get to the most, which probably is not where many people want to go right now.
In the 6K range, the upper 6K range, Ben, I can't help but want to get to Aaron Rodgers here. And look, again, I could make the argument that the Philadelphia defense has played well lately. They have. I'm not going to blame it on Darius Slay and single coverage not being able to slow down DK Metcalf. He's unbelievably dominant, virtually unstoppable. Sure, you could talk about Jalen Ramsey, but for the most part, he's gone up against good corners. Gilmore, I think Trey White, he had another 100-yard game against. So I'm willing to throw that out the window. They did a great job. Their problem is they wear down late in games. Again, they wear down late in games because their defense is always on the field. Aaron Rodgers has thrown multiple touchdowns in all but one start all season long. He has 3+ touchdowns in 7 of 11 games, and he has 4 touchdown passes in 5 games this season. I don't know why he's not around the same price as guys like Kyler Murray and Watson. I understand they have rushing upside, but assuming this Pittsburgh or Green Bay defense continues to play well at Lambeau Field, and I assume they will, Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers specifically is going to have as much time as he needs to do whatever he wants. And the last thing I'll say here before I turn it over to you, if you've watched any Green Bay football lately, Sal, you're a Green Bay fan. The amount of touchdown passes that are coming from goal-to-go situations that are coming inside the 5-6 yard line, it's remarkable. And it leads almost, 1-to-1 with why Aaron Jones has struggled so much to punch it in since week 7. I think he has 1 touchdown. So they're pretty much throwing from anywhere, even if they're a couple of yards out. I think Aaron Rodgers at 6,800 is a phenomenal play this week and has been pretty much unstoppable. Where are you going in the 6K range, Ben?
Yeah. I mean, just to speak to Rodgers, he had one, against Tampa, obviously couldn't get it going. You throw that game out, he's pretty much gotten you there each and every week. Certainly in a cash setting, I think this is my cash quarterback. The floor is fantastic. But it's a little tougher with him in stacks only because there's not as many options. Like you absolutely have to play Devontae Adams. I think if you play Aaron Rodgers, he's legitimately tied to him. And so leveraging can be a slight issue. It's nothing to say, oh, I'm going to avoid him for that reason. Weather is another thing that I have no idea what it could be, but we have to keep an eye. It is Green Bay in December. But if all those things are, look good, it's hard to make a case, despite Philly really playing hard on defense, that Rodgers doesn't have the advantage. So I'd look to him. Other than that, you've got Tannehill, you've got Fitzpatrick. I'm not going to tell anyone I don't get it. They're kind of just neutral options for me. If I fall in that range, I fall in that range. I'll probably try to get the money and get up to Rodgers or Herbert, though.
Sal, Robert Tonyan has scored the 4th most fantasy points at tight end this season. Allen Lazard certainly looked better last week. What are you doing with Aaron Rodgers and the guys priced around him?
Yeah, I like it a lot right now on paper. So you do have Adams still. And yeah, Adams is basically an extension of the run in the red zone at this point for the Packers. But I think you're slowly starting to get more options. It was basically Adams single stack it, and maybe you pray that MVS catches a big pass or a touchdown. With Lazard back, this was like his first full week. They kind of took the training wheels off from his core muscle injury. Saw 6 targets, found the end zone. He looked pretty good out there. Robert Tonyan has been coming on as well. There's sort of a 2 or 3 week lull when Adams came back that they didn't really know how to use him. He was blocking a little bit more. These past 2 weeks, he's running a lot more routes than he was for the previous month with Adams back. So I think that's a spot where I'm going to be getting to. The one concern is we've seen this for about 3, maybe 4 years now, at least looking at the Packers. When Rodgers faces pressure, that's the concern, as it is with many quarterbacks. He's only had to face pressure like once this year. He has a great offensive line, and that was against the Bucs, fell apart. A couple times last year against the 49ers in some games faced pressure, fell apart. So Philadelphia can bring pressure. That would be my only concern here, that this thing can get really blown up if a lot of ownership goes towards it. But at 6K, he stands out. After that, I'm really not interested in much here. Fitzpatrick, if he starts over Tua at this point, trying to make for a playoff spot, looks nice with a team total above 26 at this point. And you know that they're stacking options with Gesicki and Devontae Parker there. Other than that, not much. Kirk Cousins would be a very contrarian option at a priced up 6,400 with a 31 implied team total.
What about Ryan Tannehill, Ben? I know it's not a guy that we generally look to all that much, but this game right now has a pretty monster implied or over under at sitting at 54 point total. It actually opened at 52. It's up to 54. And Tennessee has an implied total. If you look at all of the teams on this slate, it is the highest of any team going on the slate right now. Derrick Henry's up to 9,200. So does Ryan Tannehill make for a decent lower priced pivot and potentially lower owned pivot in that low 6K range to you? Because I'm with Sal. I don't see a whole lot in this 6K range, but I might be willing to look to some Ryan Tannehill. Once in a while, he has himself a game.
Yeah, it would be ownership permitting. I'm not going to allocate a ton to a guy like that. And it's not him. It's more that they have abilities to control the game on the ground, and that's what they want to do. So I'll just look at his recent games. Against the Bears, he threw 21 passes. Against the Colts last week, he threw 22 passes. You're going to have a lot of quarterbacks on the slate that throw double that. You need him to push for 30 or more attempts. He's done that in a couple games, and we've seen the results against Houston in week 6, 41 passing attempts. That was basically, that was his best game of the year. It's not a coincidence. So if you think that Cleveland can keep pace or get the lead, I definitely don't mind Tannehill. It's more just, how do you think that game going? I'll take a showdown mentality and try to predict the script.
We've seen some strange games, though, where you would think that they would do everything they can to control the game on the ground. And then Tannehill comes in, again, goal-to-go situations and throws 2 touchdowns to Jonnu Smith and 1 to Corey Davis. So I'm with you in that that's what I would project to happen. But I think we could see it go in a number of different ways. Like that Jacksonville game, we were all over Derrick Henry. It ended up seeing Ryan Tannehill post pretty monster numbers. Buffalo 30 fantasy points, Houston 34 DraftKings points. He has, the upside. So I'm not willing to ignore that quite yet, especially if Derrick Henry's popular, coming off that big game, little recency bias and ownership, and Ryan Tannehill ends up being vastly overlooked along with his pass catchers. I don't know if it'll happen, but if it does, I'm on board. Sal, where are you at under the 6K range, and anyone else that we haven't touched on at quarterback?
Yeah, not much confidence in anyone down here. It's just tough when there's probably going to be one or multiple quarterbacks up top to peak towards 30 plus points, especially with Wilson, Murray, Watson's rushing upside on the slate, how much Herbert and Rodgers are throwing. But I thought Ben might be the one to say this first, is Mitch Trubisky, if he gets to start again at $5,400, a 24 implied team total. If we're looking for somebody down here, he's the one that would stand out to me. He's only done well against Detroit, it seems like, in his career. You saw the mobility last week, and he was targeting the players that he should, most notably Allen Robinson. So it's probably more so a single stack for me. I don't really trust Trubisky to connect on Mooney downfield all that much, but he had eyes for Robinson. It's a pretty easy run back with Kenny Golladay on the opposite side, or Swift if he was to return. So Trubisky would be the one. I do think Baker Mayfield is too cheap, but it's just so hard to get a ceiling out of Baker Mayfield if he's just going to score 16, 18 points. That's a good game for him, but it's not going to win you any tournaments.
Do either of you guys have DraftKings pulled up by any chance?
I do, yeah. Yes. Why?
Okay. Click on Mitch Trubisky's headshot and tell me that does not look like Spags.
Okay.
When Spags smiles, when he does that smile during these shows, there's a real resemblance there.
He looks like someone else too, and I can't. It looks like Spags and somebody else combined, and I can't get the other person.
By the way, one last thing with Tannehill, Denzel Ward's not expected to play in Week 13 either. So, if you're looking for something to aid your decision-making process. By the way, it sounds like I'm planting my flag and willing to die on the Tannehill hill. But I don't know, Ben. Quarterback's just kind of ugly this week. I think all of us would probably tend to agree. There isn't a ton. When I went through the list of players, I came up with 6 or 7 of them, and 3 or 4 of those 7 I just didn't have much confidence in whatsoever, especially down in the lower range. You have Rivers against Houston, should be a high-scoring game, but he's shown nothing this season, and it's so hard to predict which one of his pass catchers, if any of them, are going to have a big game because it's such a flat target distribution. Derek Carr coming off a brutal performance, but he's got the New York Jets. So I suppose that's doable. And as Sal mentioned, Mitch Trubisky, close out the quarterback position with some cheap options.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I think we know that I'm going to play some Trubisky. I think it's incredibly obvious that he should be the starter. Not saying he's great, but he's a better fantasy player than real life player. And even so, he's going to drop back 40 plus times. He's going to throw some picks. He may fumble a couple times. It doesn't matter. He's going to at least put up volume, and he's going to have chances. He's mobile. Last week in Green Bay, they weren't in that game at all. He ends with a very respectable 22 fantasy points. If you give me that for 5,400, I'll take it. The one other guy, and these are clearly just tournament plays, it's a good game environment. Rams, Cardinals, Goff is coming off an absolutely horrendous game. We have seen him drop back massive amounts in a few games. So if the game script gets right, you could see the Rams really throwing the ball. He has obvious stacking targets. You have great run back options on the other side of that game. It's not my favorite by any stretch, but Goff, for an aggressive tournament play, I think you could do worse, sub 6K.
Yeah, 25.8 implied total for the Rams. It's not bad at all. If we turn to the running back position, by the way, I hope you guys got in on that. If you never subscribed, I hope you got in on that Cyber Monday deal. $1 for literally everything on the site for a week. It's over now, but I'm just throwing, I hope you got in on it. If you still want to check out Awesemo, it's awesemo.com/join. Projections, ownership, top stack tool, all of the showdown projections, everything we've got on there is amazing stuff. Preeminent tools you'll find, created by the #1 DFS player in the world, Alex Baker. Check it out. If you have any questions, you can hit me up on Twitter, shoot me a DM. I'm happy to help you out. You get weekly passes for less than $4 a week. They include all of the showdown content. They include rankings for main slate. They include Express Top Stack Tool, Express Lineup Builder. You want to do the whole thing, get the Awesemo Plus Platinum. You can do weekly, monthly, annual, whatever you want. But the tools are fantastic. They help create better players, and we have proof of that. Just go to the Awesemo Hall of Fame page on Twitter and see for yourself. Awesemo.com/join. Check all of that out. All right, Sal, Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry, both of them north of $9,000. In week 12, Derrick Henry exploded with 140 plus yards and 3 touchdowns in the first half alone. Dalvin Cook, the clear chalk, coming in between 40 and 50% in every large field tournament. Monster letdown. Went to that blue tent. We knew things were looking ugly there. Returned, still had 18 carries, but man, it was such a disappointing, underwhelming performance. And he put a lot of people out of the money on his own at 9,500. Same price this week. Great matchup against Jacksonville. Now this is where we have to start.
Yeah, if I have to choose between one of these two guys up top, I'll probably go right back to Dalvin Cook, assuming that he's going to be healthy. They're seeing the same opportunities per game right now, 25.5, both Henry and Cook. You just get that passing game usage. And also what I would consider at this point a better matchup against Jacksonville. 10-point favorite instead of a 5-point favorite. So tougher for things to go wrong here. So I'll keep going to Dalvin Cook, especially coming off of a bad game. Henry coming off of back-to-back monster games. I think that you probably start to see ownership at a cheaper price point leak towards Henry. I don't think you have to play either. It's kind of scary to fade both of them. Definitely in cash, you're probably going to pick one, if not both. But in GPPs, we just talked about quarterbacks. A lot of those guys are at 7K or above. It starts to become difficult to fit in these 9K plus running backs. That's why last week it was just kind of natural for me to get away from Cook. This week, I'll probably lean towards getting back to him, assuming that I can find the salary.
Ben, what about you? We have to start at the top. It's insane getting two of these guys on this slate, both north of 9K. No Christian McCaffrey, though, so it's one or the other. And do you think there will be enough recency bias to level out that ownership? Because I feel like I have to go straight back to Dalvin Cook again.
That's going to be what I'm fascinated. You know, Dalvin Cook was massively owned. Derrick Henry was not. We saw the results. I mean, I hope there's recency bias. I hope people will look at the box score because I like Dalvin Cook. I don't think it's particularly close, to be honest. He just has the ability to get it done in so many other ways. He can catch the ball. They're just a better game script. They're at home. They need this game desperately. Not to say that Tennessee doesn't, but I really have Cook firmly ahead of Derrick Henry. And now we know how good both these guys are. So can Derrick Henry do it? We saw this last week. But for me, I would clearly start with Cook. Question I have, it's more from a lineup construction. Is it feasible to play both in the same lineup? My gut says no. It's just too big of an opportunity cost, but that's something as we get closer to Sunday, if there's COVID situations, if there's value like we saw last week where there was 10 guys around the min that were playable, maybe you can double jam at running back.
Okay. That is it worth it? Sal, I'll ask you the same question because this will be a conversation we're having throughout the week. Why not kick it off now? Do you think it could be feasible to roster both of these guys in the same lineup?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely could be feasible. Like these guys have the 30 to 40 point ceilings that you can't miss out on. You saw last week for Henry and a couple weeks back for Cook, but I think what Ben said about opportunity cost is the point that I would like leverage it on. Like you might get DeAndre Swift back this week. You have Austin Eckler for more than $2,000 cheaper. James Robinson continues to see 25 plus touches. So there's a bunch of guys that have the passing game upside like Eckler, the overall usage like Robinson that I think I'd rather get to try and get up to the Devontae Adams and Rodgers stacks or whatever it might be with your quarterback wide receiver pairing. So I think in most of my lineups, I would get to at most one of these guys. I think there's a lot of good 6 and 7K running backs this week that can get you 25 fantasy points.
Nick Chubb was one of my favorite pivots last week, just given that so many people were concerned about Kareem Hunt and ignoring the fact that these guys are combining for like 40 carries a game anyway. Broke off a solid game. I even had 3 receptions for 32 yards, which is not what I had in the cards, but he's all the way up to $7,700. Josh Jacobs against the Jets, assuming he plays, he's got that ankle injury. We'll get to Devontae Booker shortly, is 7,400. And then James Robinson, his prices come up, but not dramatically against Minnesota. The volume we're seeing from him, Sal, and you just alluded to it, is insanely high. 28 opportunities last game, 19 before that, even though they were lost by 24, 28, 27, 28. The last month and a half for him has been unthinkable.
Yeah, and it's nice to see at least like we had one game with a scare with Loughran in there if there was going to be some passing game usage and concerns. Assuming Glennon keeps starting, even if it goes back to Minshew at some point, the passing game volume is there for both of those quarterbacks. So, yeah, I mean, you're getting at this point like 18 carries a game, almost 5 targets a game out of Robinson, and now a very good matchup against Minnesota. The only downside is he's going to come in as a 10-point underdog, but he's a 10-point underdog like every single week, whether he's facing Pittsburgh, whether it's last week. So it's really not that much of a concern. I forgot who put the tweet out that only 7 other carries this year have gone to anybody not named James Robinson at the running back position on this team. So there's a lot of upside there. It's a very condensed week. I think we had this at wide receiver like 2 of the last 3 weeks, but at running back this week, I mean, from 7K flat to Kamara all the way up to Chubb, there's about 6-7 running backs in there that all look like pretty fine options that are separated by like $100 a piece.
Ben, I look at someone in Aaron Jones and I can't help but think he's probably overpriced in this matchup. Now, you always see Aaron Jones blow up and go off when he's low owned, sub 10%, and maybe that's capable of happening today. But, he just hasn't found the end zone. And unfortunately, the opportunities recently, at least, haven't been there as much as I would like to see. He's still on pace for a decent amount of, inside the 10 looks this season. But Jamal Williams also had 17 carries against Chicago. So before we get to Aaron Jones saying, he had 17 carries, so did Jamal Williams. And he scored. So I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, it in some ways mirrors what you see in Cleveland sometimes, where both of these guys get sizable workloads. The one thing I like about Aaron Jones this week is if and it's a small chance he explodes, it's going to come directly at what could be one of the most popular stacks in Rodgers and Devontae Adams. So you're directly leveraging against a lot of people in tournaments. So if you get it right, you kind of get it right twice. Now, Aaron Jones feels a little underpriced. He's losing a lot of that goal line work, as we've talked about, that Devontae Adams is an extension of the run in the red zone. But when you're talking about beating 200,000 people, you get a smash play and a big-time quarterback and wide receiver behind the 8 ball. That's pretty enticing.
What do you think about the other guys in this similar range, from James Robinson, who we just touched on, to Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, 7,100. He came onto the field immediately, played 70+% of the snaps last game, despite being on the IR, saw 14 carries and 16 targets in that road loss to Buffalo, which is absurd. I remember Sal saying if he plays, he's going to have a lot of fantasy points. I think you tweeted that, as a matter of fact. And then Alvin Kamara at 7K. Dude, if you're not worried about Alvin Kamara right now, you haven't been watching the New Orleans Saints with Taysom Hill at the helm.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara, I thought that, he was like 2% last week, and it's so enticing, but he is I can't think of a worse situation for him right now with the way they're controlling the clock, leaning on the defense, and they've got Taysom Hill. Eckler, though, at the beginning of the year, we were worried, oh my God, Tyrod Taylor doesn't like to check down. Well, clearly with Herbert in there, that's not an issue. If he's going to see this type of work, that price is only going to rise. I know you rip on Doug Peterson. I don't know what the Chargers end of that game was some of the strangest, most absurd play calls I've ever seen. But Eckler almost fell in the end zone again, and then he really would have had a big week. If he's going to see 25 touches, he's probably my favorite running back actually in the 7K range.
Thomas says, you guys are the worst last night with Seattle and Eagles. Your choice of Hurst, he means Hurts, and Swain, the worst. Well, number one, we said if David Moore plays, you can't play Swain because he goes from the 3 to the 4. And number four. It's speculation, dude.
I wasn't on the show, so don't blame me.
No. He's talking about me, Matt, and myself, and I guess whoever was on the night show. But the thing is, I think I stated at least 15 times. There's a very good chance Wentz plays the entire game, but based on Ian Rappaport's reporting, not me, one of the most known reporters in the league, Jalen Hurts was supposed to play the most snaps last night that he has all season long. I think he played 1 or 2. So yeah, but explicitly said Swain if David Moore is out. Got to pay better attention, fella. Sal, what are you doing below the 7K spot?
Yeah, I had somebody right when I opened up YouTube this morning. They said I had no interest in Richard Rodgers last night, and they said well, look who strikes again, Richard Rodgers. And I didn't see the touchdown at first, how it happened. I was like, oh, you got a fourth quarter touchdown, you gotta be kidding me. And then I saw it happen. I was like, this guy for real? I don't think this guy saw it either. But no, yeah, I think Eckler I'm gonna be all
off
in again.
Of Fulgham's hands and a one-handed grab in the end zone for Richard Rodgers on a Hail Mary in garbage time for anyone that didn't see the touchdown.
Yeah, I started chuckling. It was great. But Eckler at 7,100, yes, I like him just to close the door on him. I think continues to see a ton of usage. Herbert is looking his way, and that's all you have to ask for at this point. Yeah, the 6K range, I think there's some interesting options. You're going to have potentially DeAndre Swift coming back. It was a concussion. I think he should be fine now by all reports. He was practicing that week. He just couldn't clear the protocol in time. He only had a week to do so. So even against Chicago, I'll be fine with that. Only a 3-point underdog, and you would expect to get maybe a little bit more passing game usage there. They definitely need him at this point. So $6,500 Swift, $6,300 Carson. You saw him get out snapped and out touched basically by twice the amount on the ground by Carlos Hyde in that last game, but he looked fine on the ground, average 5 yards per carry, looked good on his touchdown. So I think I would prefer Swift in the passing game usage, but Carson, when he gets volume this year, has been very good. And that was his first game back after a month and a half off. I don't know if that had something to do with it. If it did, though, he's actually averaging more fantasy points per touch than DeAndre Swift. It's both small sample sizes. 7% touchdown rate is going to help that, but I like both of those guys that are bunched together. I would go Swift and Carson.
Okay. Yeah, just to reiterate, I'm perfectly willing to get to Austin Eckler, James Robinson. Ben, Miles Sanders can't be trusted right now, and it's really disappointing to see this. And I don't say this because I like the Eagles. I actually would prefer them to lose right now. I say this because the guy has. Why do you shake your head?
They're one game out of the division. It's amazing, this division. If all the teams were 8-3, it would be. But what's the difference? Don't you want them to win the division?
No. See, that's buffoonery. You can't want them to win.
I'm here for it.
Okay, well, here's why. Because if they win the division, they immediately get embarrassed in the wild card round, right? Would you not agree with that?
No, I wouldn't.
What?
You get a home game. It's weird.
Oh, yeah, a home game with the earthquake game. Nobody.
Oh, all right, even if they do, continue. Go ahead. I'm listening.
So, assuming they get their dicks kicked in round 1 in the wild card round, then the best draft pick they can get is 19. In this instance, they could get the
so who
fifth.
Cares?
What?
It's not like they're going to draft another quarterback, so who cares?
Okay. I don't care if they draft another quarterback. Draft somebody.
Well, they'll get somebody. I'm sure he'll be something.
They're the worst team in the NFC East. That speaks volumes. Anyway, look, here's what I'm saying. I don't want to get off track here. I could do this forever. Miles Sanders, you can't trust Doug Peterson to run the football anymore. It's that simple. And if he's going to abandon the run, which I assume he's going to do very early and often against Green Bay, I had people tweet me yesterday, Ben, man, can't wait for everyone to be off of Miles Sanders for him to play Green Bay and crush it. The only way that happens is if they go up early or if they're competitive, because the moment they go down, and this is not just my speculation, this is what's happened every game. If they go down early, Miles Sanders gets phased out of the game entirely, specifically on the ground, which is where you would want him to do his work against Green Bay's most inferior aspect of their defense.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, Sanders is a guy that I've loved in spots to roll the dice in tournaments because he's explosive, even against tough fronts. It's just not happening, though. You summed it up, and I'll probably look to leverage elsewhere if Swift is good to go. And there's some guys as we work down that I think you can get to if you want to save money. I do think I'll primarily try to pay up at running back this week, but yes, Sanders kind of like Kamara right now. It's really hard to get there.
Jamal says, this is serious morning show vibes. Ben and Laffy going back and forth about Philly sports. Yep, sure
You're not
does.
wrong. I
got to tell you though, Sal, once you get below 6K is where I start to actually have some intrigue. Now you might scoff at some of these, but Wayne Gallman is getting a ton of opportunities. I do like Green Bay's run defense. I respect them, but New York Giants defensively, particularly in the secondary, have actually been better lately. I know that Russell Wilson's been much better at home than on the road. We can factor that in fine, but Wayne Gallman was targeted 5 times last game. He's running a fair amount of routes, and he's clearly taking over the bulk of opportunities in this backfield. 24 carries against Cincinnati. He had 29 total looks. So him, as much as it disgusts me to say it, David Montgomery is viable coming off his best game of the year, averaging 9.4 yards per attempt. Of course, he had a 57-yard carry and 6 targets, 5 receptions for 40 yards. He's still the clear bell cow there, as disgusting as it is. Kareem Hunt's down to 5,400. I actually think there are a couple spots in this 5K range that I'm not totally opposed to getting to, even if they're kind of ugly coming off the tongue.
Yeah, this 5K range is loaded, and there's some question marks like in terms of health on some of these players. Like right at the top, I like Myles Gaskin a lot if he's going to be healthy this week. Almost went last week, and I don't remember the last time I saw Miami as 11-point favorites at this point, but they're opening up as 11-point favorites against the Bengals. Gaskin was getting 20 touches a week before he ended up getting hurt. He was coming out there and he was seeing. So in his previous games, he ended up getting hurt, but he saw 21 touches, 22 opportunities, 21 opportunities. He was getting all the work out there, and they are just begging for a running back right now. You have Matt Breida fumble. They gave him no work. Patrick Laird came in, saw like a touch, fumbled. They gave him no work. And DeAndre Washington, who they signed from the Chiefs as a free agent, got cut by the Chiefs. He comes in, he sees a couple of touches, but doesn't do anything with them. So they're begging for a running back. They were giving all that work to Gaskin. So I like him all the way up top at 5,900. But then, yeah, it's a laundry list. Like Duke Johnson, does David Johnson come back this week? If not, we finally got to see a decent game out of Duke Johnson on Thanksgiving right there at $5,800. You touched on Gallman and Montgomery. I probably prefer Gallman this week to Montgomery, but also Devonta Freeman is set to return. I can't see them giving him a ton of work, but they did sign him and give him money to probably at least take some touches there. So yeah, I lean to go towards the top here with Gaskin and Duke Johnson. Nyheim Hines will be probably right after Gaskin in this 5K range if Jonathan Taylor was to miss again.
If Freeman returns, and is he returning, or is it just he's eligible to return this week?
Yeah, I believe Freeman and David Johnson are eligible to return. I haven't seen like any updates on either of their status.
Okay, gotcha. I would assume that Freeman cuts in maybe a little bit, but probably not enough. If he stays out, I'm interested. Will says Gallman has not been efficient. You're right, but 29 touches is 29 touches. And furthermore, he had 8 red zone carries last game, which is all I really need. If you're going to get there in any way possible. Ben, 5K range. What do you say about this?
Yeah, I mean, Gallman's a guy that I'm going to throw my support behind. I've been playing him, so I'm a little biased, not going to lie, but you just mentioned efficiency is great, but volume is more important. Like he got stuffed 3 straight times on the goal line, and on 4th down, they just gave him the ball again, and he fell in the end. Like if you're going to get opportunities like that, you'll have opportunities, and he's not a zero in the passing game. I don't know I'll be honest, what Colt McCoy does if he ends up starting. Does that really hurt Gallman? Does that help him? He's already getting enough work. I worry that they might just be ineffective across the board, but he's probably where I'm drawn. And then we'll have to see, as you guys talked about with some of these other guys kind of being eligible to return. It may muddy the waters. Hines, obviously. The Saints situation in general is just confusing with me. I obviously they crushed the Broncos, as everyone knew. I'm not really looking to go to Latavius Murray, though.
I don't know what's funnier, the fact that CEH 1300 lost a chat bet and had to change his avatar from the Colts to the Titans, or the fact that our producer Jordan Klein noticed that he had a Colts avatar last week and that he has a Titans avatar today.
Yeah, that's
Jordan. I mean, that's the stranger part, right? The fact that Jordan realized that.
You think I have a good memory? Like, what is going on there?
I don't know.
Still,
that is really something else. All right. Some cheap guys, Ben, I'll stick with you just to get your first opinion on this. I will take credit for the Brian Hill fade because no, he's not a workhorse. Ito Smith, pretty respectable stuff you're seeing from him. Like, for example, he played only 36% of the snaps to Hill's 50 last week and 12 carries to Hill's 13, but he outproduced him easily yards per carry, 5.4 to 4.2, out-targeted him 5-1, 4 receptions on the day, and he had 7 looks inside the red zone to Brian Hill's 1. I don't know what's going on with Todd Gurley, but if he's out, that to me is interesting. And I got to throw this out there, Ben. It might finally be Cam Akers' time. Over the last 3 weeks, he's registered only 1 less carry than Darrell Henderson and 12 more than Malcolm Brown. And I did a little digging. The 2 longest runs for the Rams this year, both of them are from Cam Akers. And Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown have combined for 1 carry over 20 yards. Could this be the time? I don't know. You tell me.
I mean, I'm a big Cam Akers guy. Loved him at Florida State. I wish he was a little more active in the passing game because right now you're going to need him to fall in the end zone to get there. But we just don't have that many options when we look down here. Like Frank Gore, I saw him get his touches, no interest for me. And then as much as I complain, and I do complain a lot, I got super fortunate with James White last week. I loved the spot for him. The targets weren't there. He
rushing
scored
touchdowns
twice. I couldn't believe it. And I don't know what to make of that. Obviously, Harris is getting opportunities on the ground. James White was interesting. I just really thought that he would see, 8-10 targets, and that did not materialize.
No. Sal, 4K range actually isn't that terrible. I think there's some opportunity here, albeit risky opportunity. What do you say?
Yeah, a lot of it's just like depending on injuries still with these Miami guys, and there's just so many guys going to be battling there. Same thing for the Rams backfield. I think Akers is the most talented. I think he's been struggling with an injury basically since week 2, and that's limited him. But I still don't think they're going to give him that like 15 to 20 touch workload. So it's just tough below 5K. I don't really see anything that I want to get to unless we have some news that Gaskin for some reason isn't playing again. You could take your stabs on like a minimum price DeAndre Washington and just hope for like 10 fantasy points, and that's all you need there to punt that position. But I probably won't go down there. Same thing as Ben with James White. I ended up seeing how he got his performance of 14 points. And I liked him last week. I had him in a decent amount of lineups. I took it, but yeah, it's hard to know what to make of that. It wasn't a game where they were trailing by a lot. They actually won the game. And that's going to be the case again this week, is just 1 point underdog. So it's tough to want to go there with any sort of confidence, especially if Sony Michel starts to see more snaps.
Let's talk wide receivers. Remember, guys, you can listen to all of these shows in podcast form. Any platform that has podcasts available, we've got you covered. That's right. Just search Awesemo, AWESEMO. If you missed this, you don't want to watch it on YouTube. Maybe you don't want to keep your phone open because you don't have YouTube Premium. You don't want to support the overlords. Well, do it with the podcast. Close your phone, put it in your pocket. Bing, bang, boom. Plus, if you're watching this now and you showed up late, started from the beginning, that's why we have a topics list, or it'll publish only a couple minutes after we're done going live. Okay, Ben, Devontae Adams, 9K. We don't need to spend much time here. I think we all agree that he's a phenomenal play this week. We just saw what DK Metcalf did to Darius Slay, ate him alive, and they just put him in single coverage, which is, just totally unfair. It's cruel and unusual punishment for Darius Slay. Metcalf against the Giants. Him and Bradbury, that'll be a fun matchup. He's north of 8K for, I think, the first time all season long. And those are the 2 highest priced guys. Once you get down past that, you have Keenan above 8K for the first time, DeAndre Hopkins at 78, and even A.J. Brown at 7,600. A lot of talent, a lot of appealing spots, but you're going to have to pay a lot for these guys. And you already have Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry, who you said you might even try to get both. So what do you do here at wide receiver towards the top?
Yeah, we have a lot of expensive options. I mean, there's a multitude of guys in the 7K range, and those 3, as you mentioned, I'm not going to talk about Adams. I think Metcalf, a little overpriced coming off a ISO game. I always factor in that island games, when people play Showdown, they weigh more what they see because they're focused on that one game. So like everybody saw Metcalf torch him, Lockett was non-existent, not super there. Honestly, A.J. Brown, I'll go back to Tannehill as you talked about. I do think if you want to go against that rushing attack, he's in an interesting spot. Keenan Allen's going to get his targets. He's scoring consistently. he may get Gilmore, but all these guys are going to have to deal with either Ramsey or Bradbury. There's a lot of top end corners, and I don't know if that necessarily can stop guys of this caliber.
Sal, same question up top, wide receiver.
Yeah, they all look good. It's a broken record. I'll keep saying Devontae Adams. I think I'm going to be stacking a lot of Rodgers this week, but every single one of these guys at Hopkins price point and above, I expect to have mainly in stacks. I'll probably get more of, I would say Adams, Allen, and Metcalf probably in that order because I suspect I'll get a good amount of Lockett still as well to pull away from some of that Metcalf ownership. But just to pick a guy that is going to be set for a bounce back at $7,200, I'm going to go Calvin Ridley. Last week he had a decent game. People were expecting a lot more, projecting out for like nearly 20 fantasy points. That's what happened the last time Julio was out. Julio might be back, but that's fine. He had a fine matchup. He saw like 180 air yards last time out that he faced the Saints. Jenkins couldn't stop him. Lattimore, I believe, was banged up in that game. It didn't really matter. So Ridley's price point is fair at $7,200. We didn't really touch much on Matt Ryan. I don't want to go there. It's tough with the team total, but I do think that Ridley is affordable if you wanted to stack it or as a one-off.
Okay. The AJ Brown is getting up there in price. There's no doubt about that. But I do think there's some viability here for sure. And ultimately, Ben, what do you think ownership's going to end up looking like on AJ Brown? Because I don't know if it's going to be super high on Dalvin Cook, but there's no doubt that one will probably affect the other. What do you think AJ Brown in the same price range as a lot of other really, really good wide receivers is going to land at? If you had to take a guess, we'll get ownership sometime tomorrow.
Yeah, I'd assume it would be pretty low, and it's just because it's several reasons. One, you have a bunch of guys up here that I think people would rather go to. And two, if you play Derrick Henry, I don't know how you're going to play AJ Brown. So if Derrick Henry is popular, that directly comes from the AJ Brown ownership, maybe like 10%, maybe a little less. I think that's a pretty reasonable guess. And we'll have to see, because if he's lower owned, that's the type of guy I want to buy on. We know the ceiling's intact. It's more the floor that's the issue. And, you know, when you're paying a premium tag, like Dalvin Cook is a perfect example. If he got 0 last week, you're screwed. He got, he got a middling performance, not great. You're still in trouble. Like when you pay the premium on these guys for tournaments, you need the ceiling, the median game and the floor game. It all makes you in trouble. Maybe you don't min cash as much, but you're trying to play to win those anyway. So I'll embrace the variance with a guy like AJ Brown. Ridley's interesting. And then for me, my plan is to more attack the 6K range, which we'll get to in a second.
Okay. Yeah, Denzel Ward, again, not expected to play. That will definitely be beneficial. But the volume with Brown is one of the things that's concerning. I just wish he was getting more opportunity. And in a game where they need to throw, or maybe they decide to throw more, AJ Brown will be the guy. But that's still yet to be seen. Sal, what about in the lower 7K, upper 6K range as we work our way down the wide receiver position? Tyler Lockett coming off a rough one. Calvin Ridley, they didn't really need a ton from him, but he produced in the spots he was needed, still targeted 9 times, found the end zone. And Will Fuller's out. We'll get to Brandon Cooks momentarily. Michael Thomas being another one where how much do they really need to get him the ball right now against Atlanta? Hopefully more. We saw in the first game with Taysom Hill, he was productive, but it's tough. And then Justin Jefferson against Jacksonville. Presumably we will get Adam Thielen back in the lineup. So what do you say here?
Yeah, I think I like Ridley the most in that range. I'm okay to go back to Michael Thomas. The price point's coming down. He had that 50% target share a couple of weeks back. He has one bad game, so I assume people will get off of it. It is tough with Taysom Hill throwing the football to him, but 7K, I'm okay to get there. But then, yeah, this upper to mid 6K range is what I like a lot. We already talked about Mitchell Trubisky to an extent in games where he has started this year. Allen Robinson, 9, 11 targets, then he got replaced in that Atlanta game. And then this past week, 13 targets. So Robinson, I'm going to probably have somewhere around 10 targets you could expect in this game. So I like that at $6,700. And then assuming that Ryan Fitzpatrick starts, which we don't know what's happening with Tua, if he really does have this swollen finger or they just want to make the playoffs at this point. But Devontae Parker at $6,400 is well too underpriced for the upside that he has. All it took was one game for Fitzpatrick to come back. You get over 100 yards, you get the 20-plus point performance. And now he gets the Bengals this week. They are big favorites, but I do like the 26 implied team total. So Robinson and Parker at that upper to mid 6K range probably stand out the most to me.
Both of these guys seem to benefit from the newly installed quarterbacks, Ben. Devontae Parker, we were all on him last week. And Allen Robinson has a 37, I think, % target share with Mitch Trubisky under center this season. What are you doing at the 6K spot?
I'm playing these guys.
I love Robinson this week.
Possibly my favorite play overall on the week is Robinson. He's just They fall behind, he's going to get force fed. If they are winning somehow, it's because he probably scored to get them up. There's just not a lot of ways that he's not involved. And you save salary. We need to try to steal some money here and there. Him, Parker, I'll go down to the Rams guys. They're very tough to predict. Sometimes it's Kupp, sometimes it's Woods. It's kind of like the Seattle situation. So you can look to those guys. I tend to side with Kupp. He's coming off the worst of the two games. I'll probably do that again. This is the range that I really try to attack. And I hope my plan is to pair a couple of these guys, get Dalvin Cook, and then see where I have to fill in with cheapies.
Do you like anybody once you get into the 5K spots? Of course, Brandon Cooks against Indianapolis, not a pristine matchup. And you know what? Maybe Brandon Cooks being the wide receiver 1 will hurt him. It's possible. I'm not convinced that it's going to help him, but I think from a volume standpoint, he should benefit from it. He still has massive big play potential, as good as almost any receiver in the league. So we can start there in the 5K spot. He's $5,600 with Will Fuller suspended for the remainder of the season, 6 games to be exact.
Yeah, for me, he's the obvious play, and then we have a lot of questions. So, like, what's up with Golladay if he sits? Marvin Jones. I think Myers is an interesting pivot off Cooks if he's massively popular. He had that one bad game as chalk, but he's still commanding a large target share in this Patriots offense. And then you have, like, secondary options of Stacks, Kirk, Lazard types. Probably only go with my quarterback, but this range is really dependent on the lineup itself for me.
There were a lot of people that trolled us the other week for talking about Jarvis Landry prior to knowing that the weather in that Philly game was going to be horrible. And he ended up not being great, which marked, Sal, the 3rd game in a row since Odell Beckham went down that Jarvis Landry was playing in monsoon type weather or hurricane force winds. This week goes down to Florida, beautiful weather, no issues, rips off easily his best game of the season, his first 100-yard game of the season, and his first receiving touchdown of the season. So how do we weigh those two against each other? There's no Odell Beckham. There was some good weather, and we finally saw him erupt, whereas in the other games, he did absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I think that exactly what you said. There's a bye week mixed in there, so it was a month off in the game where the first game back with bad weather, he had like an 11 target game, had like a bang touchdown call that didn't go his way as well, so could have had a big game there. And yeah, I think that he's fine. I think now he's probably priced where he should be at like this $6,200 to $6,500 range. Fine play if you want to get to him. I think the Tennessee secondary is not good. It continues to get worse, in my opinion, each week that goes by. This past week looked half decent, but T.Y. Hilton was their biggest threat. So I think that Landry's fine to get to. It's just other options that I would say have a higher ceiling in Parker and Robinson and get there more often as long as Fitzpatrick plays with Parker. So I think Landry's appropriately priced now, as opposed to last week and the week before where I took a strong stance. This week I'm just kind of neutral to it.
What about the 5K range?
Yeah, you guys touch on Brandon Cooks. Think he looks good. I really don't know. I think they're going to have to go back to 2 tight end sets a good amount of the time. They did that a lot last year as well. Unless they re-sign Kenny Stills, I don't know how they're going to be putting a rookie on the outside that has like no experience this year in Coulter. So Cooks should be force fed. They could put him in the slot as well. He can get nice matchups anywhere he really wants to go as long as they scheme it that way. But then this whole 5K range is kind of a dead range. I don't really want much of it at all. You have wide receivers losing volume and usage, whether it's Fulgham. You have inconsistent players in Christian Kirk, Aguilar. Quarterback's gone now for Sterling Shepard and Slayton. So I think Allen Lazard at 5K flat, if we are going to get to some Packer stacks, I think he's fine. This past week, he only saw 6 targets. He had to get the touchdown to get you there, but this was his first true week back. He's now basically had in his healthy games a good game in 4 out of the 5 of them. So I think he's fine to get to. And also the Packers, they didn't throw the ball. They didn't have to at all in the 4th quarter. Rodgers only attempts 29 passes, and he sees 6 targets on those, a couple throwaways. So he was seeing around a 23% target share in this game. They ran the ball 34 times. If you get Rodgers back to throwing 35, 36 times in this game, I think you can definitely see some 7-8 target game for Lazard at 5K flat.
Ben, I'm going to rattle off a couple names and see where you stand on these guys. We already talked about Brandon Cooks. Sal just mentioned Allen Lazard, and I think, given what we think of Philadelphia's offense contributing to Rodgers being on the field and Rodgers just being in MVP form, there's a lot to like there. But Jacoby Myers against the Chargers, they've proven that they will give up huge yardage to the opposing offenses. Sterling Shepard against the Seattle team that, unless they're facing the Eagles, is the worst secondary in the league. And I say that not tongue in cheek. I'm not in jest. I'm dead serious. This team has been carved up outside of last week. And then Corey Davis, maybe an alternative to someone like A.J. Brown. $2,500 discount. Jamison Crowder against Vegas at 5,100. There are a decent amount of options in this range. Not to say I like all of those guys, but a few of them I definitely have some interest in.
Yeah, I think these guys, again, it's somewhat lineup dependent. Some Myers as leverage off Cook. I want to see what's up with Daniel Jones. Colt McCoy doesn't seem like he's going to carve up any secondary anytime soon. So that could be a problem for a guy like Shepard. And then, Davis, if I go to Tannehill stacks, maybe he finds his way in there. So it's not a dead range. Honestly, as gross as it sounds, the Jets receivers, all of them, not together. I looked at Crowder. Mims is probably the guy that I'm going to continue to play. He's getting the target share. He's a rookie. They want to get him looks. He's just got to find the end zone, which is a daunting task for a team that can't score. So he's a bargain bin, and we'll see what opens up. Last week, Jacksonville produced a number of guys that we could play near the min. Isabella was there. Not that that worked, but there were ways to do it. And I just want to see exactly what this week holds in that regard.
I find myself playing a lot of these Jets receivers every week, Sal. And when I say a lot of them, I mean, I'm getting exposure to Perriman because his targets have been there and it's downfield opportunities, and Denzel Mims because he's been so cheap. Jamison Crowder's a little bit more expensive than these guys, but every week I've been stacking against the Jets and saying, oh, well, I got a really simple run back option here. I'll just throw in one of these guys. It's 3,500.
Yeah, exactly. I think they still look good. I think Mims is probably the guy that I want to get to more so over Perriman. They both look like similar plays. I think it'll be interesting to see just moving forward with Darnold, how much of these air yards continue to hold up. They are 1 and 2 in the NFL right now over the last month in average depth of target, both Mims and Perriman, which is crazy to see, but all that was basically with Joe Flacco. So that would be the main concern there. Darnold did not look good when he finally had a healthy O-line and every single one of his weapons healthy. So that's a concern, but it is just one game for him. So the Jets receivers, I have them in a player pool right now. I think that some people might be drawn to, probably not in a major way, like Kiki Kute because of what's happening with Will Fuller. I really don't see how his role increases. He's not going to be put on the outside. He's just going to be the same role that he probably was if Will Fuller wasn't going to be out there. Maybe he's an extra target. So that's not going to be really that interesting to me. Yeah, the cheap options basically look like, at least in this bottom of the 4K range, MVS will be in stacking options. T.Y. Hilton, best game of the year, comes alive last week, now gets Houston secondary, where I believe Bradley Roby also got suspended for 6 games, if that's correct.
He did, yeah, he did. He posted on Instagram about it yesterday too, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's like the same doctor they went to, him and Fuller, but it was, it was interesting to see. So that opens up some upside for at least Hilton, but probably more so Pittman, who's coming off of a bad game, sees no ownership. So in this cheap price range, Pittman's the guy that I like the most. And then it's just a bunch of guys like either filling out stacks or just getting me to the lineup that I need. I don't really see a lot of upside here.
Yeah, like maybe Colin Johnson is in there again, depending on the injuries for Jacksonville, Ben. But the 3K range are going to be, just taking shots like we did with Gabriel Davis. I thought he was a good play. He ended up coming through. Andy Isabella with Fitzgerald out. There will be some opportunities that spring up throughout the week. And you know what? It's a risky proposition, but with so many good high-end players this week, we're going to find ourselves all the way leading up till Sunday talking about a bunch of these cheap 3K receiver options.
No doubt. We just have to more and more with the COVID situation, everything. We have to just keep an eye on it, and the slate will evolve. Doors will open up. And come Sunday, we'll have a better idea of how aggressive we can be up top because of the value down low.
TBEJ says, stop thinking you have to bring back with a Jets player. I don't think I have to. It just works. Like if they're $3,500 and I'm rostering a bunch of expensive guys against them, I like to bring it back with a Jets player. And like if you get 10 or 11 from Mims at, what was he, 3,300 or 15 from Perriman, I don't know, Ben, I don't always bring it back if I don't think I have to. And some teams I don't like to, but the Jets, I actually like doing it because they're so damn cheap and they're going to have to throw no matter how inefficient and horrible they are offensively.
Yeah, I mean, bring it back. I don't know if that means, in terms of Raiders stacks, but
I'm not talking about this week. I'm sorry. I'm saying in the past.
Yeah, I think just everyone is scarred from the Chiefs game, where if you stack the Chiefs, everyone brought it back with Berrios or the other guy. I don't even know who it was at this point, and it didn't work per se.
It did though. Berrios had like 14 fantasy points, I thought, at minimum salary.
Whoever, it was either Perryman or one of the other guys was.
I think it was Mims. I think it might have been Mims at 3K.
Yeah.
And he had like 8, but
Berrios had 11. I'm sorry, but still, he was $3,500.
Yeah, listen, if there's no reason you have to be forced to, but if we don't get more value, you're going to have to look to these Jets receivers because they're some of the only viable plays down here, and we need the salary.
Quite frankly, I prefer not to run it back with anything because I hate stacking Derek Carr teams, Sal. Well, I just never know where it's going to go.
Yeah, once I saw last week that Derek Carr was pushing like potentially highest owned quarterback, I just took him out of my exposures. I wanted nothing to do with that. He's like an okay option when he looks like he's going to be like the sneaky play if you think he can somehow muster together a 300-yard game, which seems to be rare, but not when he's going to be like all that chalky. I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah. But when someone's like almost minimum salary and they're the number 2 receiver on the team, or when Crowder was out, number 1 receiver on the team, locked into like 7 to 9 targets, I have no problem getting there. I don't care if they're on a bad team. Anyway, Sal, let's close it out with wide receiver or with tight end. And then our favorite defense under 2,800. This one's going to be fun. I don't think we'll have to spend a whole lot of time at tight ends here, but I'll kick it off to you. Feel free to hit from any range. I'm not going to go all 3 tiers because there's just not a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I think that just hitting from any range, then Mike Gesicki at $4,200. We keep saying if it's going to be Fitzpatrick. If it is, I mean, that's the only way I have interest in Gesicki at this point. Got the touchdown last week. Didn't have all that much volume, but we've seen it this year and last year also with Fitzpatrick. That's really how Mike Gesicki came alive as a name that people know. Fitzpatrick was feeding him the last month of the season in 2019. So he's somebody that stands out. And then back-to-back in the pricing, you don't really have any punting options this week. DraftKings the last month has kind of gotten good with that, but you still have very cheap options. You have Hooper at 3,800, got a good weather game. He was relied on outside of Landry as like the second option for Baker. And then Robert Tonyan, like if we're going to have a chalky stack, I don't think it's going to be all that chalky. Like you might get like an 8 to 10% Rodgers because you have Russell Wilson and Kyler on this slate. But either way, even if it's going to pick up some ownership in like mid stakes, higher stakes, getting a tight end into your stacks, one that has upside like Tonyan's seen these last couple of weeks, that's something that I have interest in. We saw Tonyan catch all 5 of his targets. He had 67 yards and a touchdown in that game, and that's coming off of a game where he had a very similar performance. So Tonyan at 3,700, I think, offers a lot of upside.
Ben, will you wear goggles to one of our shows?
Goggles?
Yes. Kyle Heck says, why does Ben,
you?
and by the way, thank you for the super chat,
yeah, appreciate
Kyle.
that.
What's that? Yeah. He said, why does Ben Rasa look like the kicker Rodrigo Blankenship on the Colts?
I do. Yeah, maybe I'll go for a goggle look.
Just one show. I think it'd be great.
After I bink a milli, a showdown with that guy, and then I'll do it. That's the plan. But we appreciate the super chat as always.
Sal, chat's making fun of your Robert Tonyan pronunciation.
Oh, is it Tonyan? Oh, come on. These guys in the chat just found out the real way to say it like 3 days ago.
You're a Packers fan, dude.
Oh, yeah, Robert Tonyan. All right, so Bobby Tonyan then. Is that the proper way to say it?
Yeah, oh, dude, I got eviscerated for my Kerryon Johnson because I was calling him Kerryon Johnson, like basically just leaving out a syllable entirely. I got crushed for that because I was making fun of Matt Gajeski for calling he calls him Deontay Johnson. So I guess we all have one guy that we can't.
Well, what was the name that last year? For
the one that you got wrong last year was Austin Eckler.
Eckler. I don't know why. I think I heard somebody on an announcer say it one time, and I just said it every single time for like 2 years, and I got slandered.
We can't get everything right around here. Ben, what are we going to tight end? We'll wrap this up.
Yeah, I'm living in that same range as you guys. Guys like Gesicki. I think Hooper, if you wanted to go to Baker. Ingram, if Daniel Jones is back, he's coming off a nice game. But mostly it's just going to be maybe third man in on stacks where I don't see another good receiver. Or value that opens up. Last week, I practically much exclusively punted with Kyle Rudolph at 2,800. If someone is available down there because of injury or whatnot, I'll look to do that. I think more and more this year we're seeing you get 8 to 10 from a guy. It opens, it unlocks permutations, and you can seriously survive the raw points.
All right, we got less than a minute here. Under 2,800, Ben, your defense for week 13.
Easy. I'll go to the Jets again. Everyone, and listen, the Saints were fine. No, they looked good. Clearly, they got their turnovers. I played the Jets last week. They got 9, and I was absolutely thrilled.
Yep, so did I. Minimum salary, and I played the Jags, and while it wasn't great, I don't care. I'll just play cheap defenses, and I'll be okay with it. I like the Jets too. What about you, Sal?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll end up going to the Lions. As much as we seem to like Trubisky a decent amount this week, I'll still just bank on the fact that he's Mitch Trubisky and go with the $2,500 Lions.
I think that is a pretty fair take to have. Thanks, guys, for hanging out. We love you all. Subscribe. Hit that thumbs up before you go. We'll see you back here tomorrow. It's the Stacks and Ownership edition. Ben, you got any golf coming up today?
Absolutely. Last PGA event of 2020, 2:30. Me and Fantasy Golf Man. We will be there. The Top Golfers tool is free this week. It's a great way to round out the golf season for 2020.
Follow Sal at Sal Vetri DFS, Ben at Jazzraz DFS, myself, Laffy_D. It's LOUGHY_D, and Awesemo.com at Awesemo_com. Thanks for hanging out, guys. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the NFL Strategy Show.
How many spam calls do you guys get a day?
It's outrageous.
Is it outrageous? Okay.